I am in a surprisingly good mood considering that in the middle of the night, some degenerate broke into my truck. You can see they probably stuck a large screwdriver into the lock and just beat it relentlessly until it opened. Fortunately, there was nothing inside the bed. There's a bed extender in there and some shopping bags, but they didn't take either. I think it was a quick smash and grab, and when they didn't see any tools, they just ran, but they damaged the lock to the point that it no longer works. This is what you would normally use to open it, but it doesn't go in anymore. So to open it, you now have to do as they did, use a screwdriver, and that releases the cover. So we're gonna do something to fix that, make it better than stock. This right here is the reason why I'm in such a good mood. Parts. Here's what the inside of the bed looks like. You can see I have a bed extender that I fitted to the inside of the bed of the truck here. This is actually for a Jeep Renegade, but it's adjustable and fits quite well. Has these tie-down straps to keep it from bouncing when you go down the road. I think I'm gonna remove the tailgate and the bed extender, because if I mess up trying to fix this and it gets latched without being able to release it, there's no plan B method to get into the bed. Then you have to cut something to get back into there. So if the tailgate's open, I can always release the mechanism, which is hidden underneath this valance panel here. It's kind of a flexible metal panel at the top that has the latching mechanism behind it.
There we go.
Okay, and then, see, okay, got it from underneath.
You got that one?
Yeah, go towards you. There you go. This is gonna be fun to get it back on. This is the mechanism that opens the latches. They're essentially two latches that are similar to a hood release latch. So it's got a double locking kind of mechanism inside of it. And you can see, essentially you turn the key and it moves both of these rods slightly. And that in turn pulls on this lever, which is adjustable. And if we close the latches, you can see one of them popping free here. That's the double latching mechanism. Once more for good measure on the driver's side. Yeah, you can see it's not releasing all the way. So we got to get this absolutely perfect so that it releases. There's a lever here in case you somehow get trapped in the bed with the tonneau cover closed. You can release it from inside. And some cabling for the light inside the bed. So we're going to replace all of that with something better. This right here is the reason why I'm in such a good mood. Parts. We've got some door poppers here and a button to replace the key switch. Got some Microswitches. I'm going to break down this project into 3 parts. The first part, the biggest one, is going to be replacing the mechanical mechanism where the key unlocks the tonneau cover with these door poppers. We got to make sure that they're actually capable of releasing the latches. That's the very first thing to test. And then we have to wire it into this button. The button's going to be wired to the same power source as the light in the bed. So that means it's going to be always on. And that means anybody who walks by my truck and pushes that button will be able to pop the tonneau cover lid. But once I get that working, at least I can confirm that all of this stuff works electrically and mechanically to pop the lid. The second phase is I'm going to wire in one of these micro switches somewhere in the door so that when the doors are unlocked, you have power going to that button. And when the doors are locked, which happens either when you're driving or when the car is parked and locked with the remote, then the button won't have any power to it, which means you can push it all you want. The tonneau cover isn't going to open, and when it doesn't have power, this little ring around the outside also does not light up. And the third phase is going to be some LED lighting. There is already a single bulb in there that illuminates it, and I've replaced that bulb with a LED direct swap, but it's just a single light source for the bed. And we're going to replace it with this LED strip lighting. You can see we have about 5 meters worth of this stuff. So that should just run the circumference of the bed. I'll put it up on the tonneau cover so it's illuminating downwards. I've got some pieces to mount the corners together so we can have 4 independent strips wired together as one. And got some Velcro. Hopefully this adheres to that fuzzy stuff on the inside of the tonneau cover here and allows me to stick those things up in a straight line along the edges of the tonneau. So that'll be phase 3. That one's obviously the least important of the 3 steps. That's just aesthetics. So let's get to the testing. First things we got to check are what do the poppers do? What's the travel on the end of the popper here? You can see they extend and pull back, but I got to energize these things with 12 volts to see what did they do. Okay, we're going to do a test fire on one of these door poppers. There's no indication as to the polarity of these 2 wires, so I don't know if green is ground or what, if it even matters. Let's go ahead and see what happens. I'm going to use this car battery for my 12 volt source. These things can only handle voltage for a very short period of time, otherwise they'll burn out. So if I hold the contacts down here for too long, that's it for these things. So let's see, what can we do here? Let's see, does it matter? Polarity. So green is positive for pulling. Yeah, we definitely want green to be positive. Okay, we're going to take apart the latching mechanism here. The key. Okay, it's time to test if the door popper can pop open the latch here. You can see the mechanism is hanging, and you can latch it manually and then pull on this, release the two mechanisms. If it pulls not enough, it may only release just one, not both latches. And if it pulls too far, I noticed that this mechanism actually pulled past the travel. So I bent this armature a little bit so that it hits the stop here and can't go past. And it also has to return enough so that the latch can actually latch a second time. If it pulls too far and doesn't release, then the latch will not close when I try and slam the tonneau cover again. So I've wired up some of the wiring over here to temporarily test it. And basically what we have to do is take this, and this blue cable is our positive. So we're going to hold it up about here. Let's release it enough so that this is now fully latched. And I'm going to hold this as solid as I can. Let's try this again. Okay. I'm going to hold this to the underside of the tonneau and trigger it. And I should be able to still latch it. Let's try again. It moved a little bit. So it seems like that's going to work. I'm not sure if I want to mount these directly in the center like this, or if I want to mount them and get rid of this bar. I have to think about that. It is adjustable on the ends, which I like. I don't want to lose this adjustability, but there may be another way to make the throw of this thing adjustable. But essentially I have to mount it to the underside here, and then it'll be hidden underneath that valance cover. And once it's solid, then I don't have to hold it or do anything like that. Just have to adjust it. So far, proof of concept looks good. These door poppers are definitely strong enough, and the travel is excessive for what it needs, but I think it should work. As long as the return on this plunger actually goes back and then back out again so that the latch can once again latch, then I think we're good. So the way that these door poppers are intended to work, they come with this little rod. You feed it through here. And in your doors, there's going to be a similar rod for the locking mechanism. Let's say you have a car that only came with manual locks on it. You add an alarm system, so now you have an electrical trigger with which to unlock the doors with a remote key fob or something else electronically rather than mechanically. You can have this inside the door, and this popper will be triggered by that mechanism, by the alarm or something else. And I'm going to use one of these other rods. This is a skinnier rod than what you'd find inside the door. The rod will be similar to the one you just saw on the inside of the tonneau cover, and they give you this little adjustable bit so you can put the two rods parallel to each other. You can see there's a hole. They give you 3 screws, and this stub screw will then attach this piece so it can't move on the rod anymore. And then for the parallel rod that's part of your car, which will be thicker than this, that goes inside here, and you put 2 of those stub screws and you can get them aligned parallel to each other. Put this in a spot where it's not going to impact with the locking mechanism or the window rolling down or anything like that. And when this fires, then it's going to unlock the doors for you. You could also pair it with a popper, a spring mechanism that actually pushes your door open. So if you shave your door handles, then when you trigger this thing, it'll actually open the door and push it out to you. So you don't need to have any door handle to pull on the outside of the door. You just grab the edge of the door and pull it open. I think what I'm going to do is actually use this mechanism here to go inside of that. So I can run this rod completely remove the factory rod, and then rather than use this bit to attach to another rod, all I need is this one stub screw, and this gives me my adjustability. So essentially this end will have the latch on it, and I can move this and put the stub screw wherever I want, slide this mechanism, and then I don't have an excessive amount of rod here underneath the tonneau cover. I can even probably trim this shorter depending on how close I want to get this popper mechanism to the latch itself. So I think that's my solution. I just have to figure out how to mount this. It comes with these very simple, cheap brackets, and essentially you mount those to the top of the popper, and then you screw this to the underside of the tonneau or inside of your door. So that might have to be how it gets mounted. I think I can put 2 screws here, and then a screw here and here. I only have about 1/2 inch of thickness worth of tonneau, so I have to be very careful not to drill out the top side of it. Say that's proof it works. Now I gotta mount this thing. I think I'm gonna mount it a little bit closer, but otherwise I like it. I had to put some tape lines on here to mark off where the boundaries are of that valance panel. This piece we see down here. So when this goes up, those are the boundaries of it. And that'll tell me where I need to mount the motors. My plan is to mount it something like this, but you can see the pull rod will be a bit too long, so I'll trim it. No big deal. The reading is just over 1/2 inch, 0.552, and that's with this metal plate here. So the screws I have are slightly too long. They're 9/16, but a lot of that is just the point of the screw, which I don't want to come through the fiberglass cover. So I'm probably going to grind off the heads of the screws after I start the holes, and yeah, go from there. You might be asking yourself, why not just go out and buy the correct length screw? And although part of the answer is because I'm lazy, the other reason is that the tip of the screw doesn't really do much to hold it in place. And since there's so little to hold it against the power of that motor, I'd rather have the full threads all the way along the length of it, since I have less than ½ an inch to work with. So I'm just going to cut off the tip, which isn't really doing anything other than helping it to burrow into the wood or whatever material you're drilling into. And I'm going to pre-drill that, so we don't really need that part of the screw. Alright, put a drill stop on here using some tape, and we're going to drill this out, hopefully not go too far. Looks like we may actually have some metal or something behind there. Shoot. Damn it. Apparently I had less metal to work with than I thought. Less material to work with than I thought. Dang. Alright, well, drilling a hole through my tonneau cover wasn't the smartest thing I've ever done, but I'm definitely not going to be drilling 3 more of them. So we need to find an alternate means, some kind of bracket to mount the popper on there. So I'm going to make this out of some L-channel aluminum I had lying around, and that means I need to cut it down to length. So here's what I came up with as my solution to avoid perforating my tonneau cover with more holes. Brace this L-channel aluminum with some available fasteners that were already embedded in the tonneau cover. Unfortunately, this stud is captured inside the tonneau cover. I guess they cast the fiberglass around it, and it's now spinning in its bore. The same exact thing happened to the other side, and I fixed that particular issue right here. As you can see, I cut a little groove into the bottom of it so I could stick a flathead screwdriver in there to prevent it from spinning when the lock nut is tightened or loosened. So I need to do the same thing on this side. However, overall it's pretty stable. Mainly it needs to be able to hold forces in this direction and back the other way a little bit. So I think it's going to do just fine for what I need to do. We do have one issue with the motor, and that's the fact that this L channel hits at the top here. So I'm going to have to cut a relief wherever I want to mount this along the L channel. And I don't think that should harm the rigidity of it too much in the directions we're concerned about. So I'm just going to cut a little groove there. Yeah, we'll mark it, and I guess I'll also cut the groove for that captured stud that's inside there. All right, here we go. Nice. Seems like it works. If we do only one click. What if this thing spins around? Don't mess anything up. Doesn't seem to matter. I think that's gonna work. Before we go any further, I'm going to seal up this hole I drilled in the lid so that we don't have water leaking through. I'll figure out at some point in the future how to cover this up. The tonneau cover paint isn't perfect, so I don't feel too bad about it, but I'll probably put some touch-up paint or something on there. Alright, I got some JB quick weld here. Mix it up. Okay, let that cure and go back to work. You can see I masked off the hole from the bottom so that the JB weld wouldn't come through. Since it's quick weld, it's already dried enough at least to take off the tape. Let's see if any came through. A little bit. A perfect little plug in there. Okay, now that I have the popper mounted in the correct direction, let's see about getting this whole thing assembled and see if it all works. Pretty good. I'm gonna put a little dab of blue Loctite on these stop screws on the clamping mechanism that sets the rod. These are pretty important. If these let go or move, that's gonna be the end of it. There's no way that this thing will open without these. Good to me. Okay, both sides look good. Let's see if this can release the hatch now if I close it. Let's wire this together. Okay, I wired up something to trigger both of them simultaneously. Just something temporary. Let's see if we close the lid now. That's all the way shut on both sides. Let's give this a shot. I'd say that was a success. Okay, the time has come to replace the mechanical lock with an electrical button. This is a momentary switch. It's slightly larger diameter, so you can see it doesn't fit all the way in through the hole, so we need to enlarge this to make it fit. I could have chosen a 22mm switch, and that would have fit through the opening, but as you can see, there's kind of a mushroom head on each of them with a gasket that seals. And the mushroom on the mechanical lock is much larger. The one on the switch is only about 1.5mm, so I wanted to make sure that it seals against the surface here and we don't get water leaking into the tonneau cover, or even worse, into the electrical connections on the back of this. So I'm going to enlarge the opening. It looks like it might actually fit or come very close to fitting through the fiberglass section, but there's some metal below that engages the mechanical lock here. It has some grooves that key into it to prevent it from spinning in its bore. And even this barely fits through the opening. It has a spring mechanism that kicks it back when you release the pressure on the key, and that gets caught, as you saw when I was removing it originally. So first step, I'm going to enlarge the opening to match the opening on the tonneau cover in the fiberglass, because there's some metal in the way down here. And when I open that up, I'm going to test fit the switch and see if this passes through. I have a feeling I'm going to have to remove just a small amount of it to get this to pass through. I'm going to remove as little as possible to give that tiny little gasket, it's not even a gasket, I think it's an O-ring, a chance of sealing against the upper surface here. Okay, I've got a tungsten carbide bit on the end of my 4-dom grinder. Let's see what we can do without damaging the fiberglass, hopefully. So I removed the ears from the little metal tabs in here, and this still doesn't fit through, so I'm going to remove some of the fiberglass, get this opening exactly the size I want, and then remove the metal layers underneath. I'm wearing a respirator, as you can hear, because it's fiberglass, and gloves for the same reason. Bingo. Okay, the switch now fits. Let's go ahead and install it. This was the other reason that I chose the 25mm switch, was because the thickness of the material I had to pass through was thicker than the 22mm one would reach. It looks like it's hitting still this bar stock. All right, I went ahead and removed the bracing, the brackets to get this thing in, and made some clearance for that nut, but it's easier to put it in before the brackets, so I'm just going to do that now and then put the brackets in later. Okay, the brackets are back in place, and you can see I made some extra clearance on this side for our large nut to capture this thing. And if we look at the top side, the button looks pretty good. Now we got to wire it up. Okay, I've already crimped on a connector to go into the switch. The black wire powers the LED that lights up the switch, and the green wire is the power input. And this other green wire is going to get connected anytime you push down the momentary switch. And I've trimmed and cleaned up these very, very sticky cables that have all the glue from the flocking inside of the tonneau cover here. They basically pulled the wires through, I guess, as they glued it, and the glue dried all over it. That makes them all gooey. I've cleaned it up, trimmed it, and now we're going to put the opposing connector onto here. And I'm not going to connect these yet because I don't want to short anything. I've already managed to blow the fuse twice because I touched the power to something that was connecting to ground. So as long as this doesn't touch anything and it's pretty well protected, I think we're good. The power only has to go into the switch and then back out again. The ground is the thing that needs to go everywhere. So I've trimmed this down, but it's gonna have to go across. And it's something like this. So it has to go here, it has to go here. Okay, figured out what I'm gonna do. Trimmed off the ground wire here, and I'm gonna run that almost all the way to the other side. And I'm gonna made it 3 individual wires. So we're gonna make these into one. These are gonna go to the 2 poppers, and one of them is gonna go to the LED wire in here to get grounded. All right, so they all fit into one of these. Notice that I picked 2 males, that way these can't connect to each other, in case I'm not sure what I'm doing the next time, or whoever's working on it doesn't know. This will reach to here. And our blue wires are the ground for the motors. So this is plenty of length already. Let's see if we connect this. Oh, this is ground. This is about the right length. And final ground. Okay, those are all the grounds. Now all we have to do is connect our positive output from the switch to these 2 and connect this together at the end. Here's what I'm gonna attempt. Have 1 bullet connector here, and then have this red wire take it back to the other side. Okay, and then for simplifying, now we only need 1 more connector. Instead of having 2 wires, just 1. Probably could have soldered all of these together, but if I have to take it apart for any reason, this is going to make it a lot easier. There we go. Last connection. Okay, everything's wired up. And we got our nice blue LED light right there on the switch. And if we push on our momentary switch, it works. Now I just gotta tie up these loose wires and put that valance panel back on to hide all of it. You probably noticed I didn't leave any electrical connections for the light. This one is going away. We're gonna connect it in a different way later. All right, as you see, I put 3 zip ties on here to hold this out of the way. And now we're gonna put the valance back. pieces of tape at the end here just to mark that both latches are closing. It's all the way down, and it is. Tune into the next episode where I drill more holes in my tonneau cover. Just kidding. Where I connect the button to a micro switch in the door, preventing access to the bed by connecting the button to the door locks. I also install LED strip lights into the bed.